Once the Viva is over and the candidates left the room, the committee then discusses the candidate's performance and any changes that might be needed. They agree that the work has been properly referenced and that the contribution of the candidate versus any other collaborators has been clearly identified. The examiners and convener have two options. They can complete all of the paperwork and then let the student know the outcome and recommendations. Alternatively, they might agree the outcome, let the student know, and then complete the paperwork. In this case, they complete all of the paperwork first, agree on how those changes will be checked, and then they inform the candidate of their recommendations. The candidate will be given 1 month in which to make his corrections and submit his corrected thesis to the internal examiner, who will then check that the changes have been made.
What are your opinions then on how the discussion went? Are you happy with his account of the particular aspects that you raised in your reports? Jim?
Yes, well certainly I was very happy with the written content of the thesis. There were 1 or 2 areas that we wanted to probe him on. I thought he did very well. He defended those areas that we queried him on. His defence was quite firm in some locations, but not firm enough that he couldn't take other ideas on board, so there's a bit of flexibility.
Yeah, I observed that. I think that's very important. That's good.
No, I was happy with his performance. Quite robust.
Good. Zoe?
I think I probed him quite hard on the issue of the model sensitivity, and he didn't get defensive and back off. He was quite good on that.
Yeah, he did seem to be fully appreciative of what the issues were, defended where he had backup information to defend, but as Jim said, he still showed that he was open to ideas. He wasn't just defending blindly.
No,
that's right.
It seemed like a good discussion.
Yeah,
that's good. I would agree with that. So, in terms of the recommendations that we're going to make for the corrections, Jim, if you're happy, we can take your thesis with the typographical errors and small grammatical changes that have to be corrected, and you have a list of changes. So for our paperwork, I'll note that you'll have a copy of the thesis with the minor errors included. Jim, you mentioned a couple of references, important references that should be included. Are those indicated in the thesis? Yeah, that's good. And the other aspects I have noted here that I picked up during the course of the discussion. There's an issue about the sensitivity of the model to the gaps in the data, and that was something that you'd raised initially, Zoe. In terms of how it was discussed, you said you felt that you discussed it well. Should there be changes?
He discussed it better than it was written in the thesis, and I'd just like maybe a few paragraphs at the end of that chapter just to open that up as an option, and then close it down and say it doesn't actually matter as much as some of the other assumptions. But just he didn't really acknowledge that in the thesis as well as he did in the Viva.
When he discussed it.
So insert a section on sensitivity and perhaps some of the errors, a clearer acknowledgement of where the errors lie in his data. That's part of it.
And he needs to get rid of the dodgy significant figures.
That's right.
Yes,
that's right. Some of the tables need to be adjusted. They're far too detailed.
And you mean you want the error bars on the graphs as well? That was something that Zoe
had mentioned. Yes, error bars on graphs, and actually the graphs had too many significant figures, and the tables were about right. So
yes,
it just needs to be consistent really with the data.
Another issue that you mentioned, Jim, was that of the switchover from the gravel to the sand. There seemed to be a lot of discussion about that.
Yes, there's a lot of discussion there because it's a live issue in the literature and out there. And I felt that he was stronger orally than he was on paper. And what he needs to do is to insert a section to detail the rate at which the changeover, if it takes place, and when the rate at which it takes place. So it's an issue of sediment supply, but marrying that with his sea level change curves through time. So there needs to be a little section on rates of change at those crucial switchover points.
So he's dealt with it in terms of the timing, but more data on the rate. That's good. Zoe, you'd also mentioned a summary diagram that you thought that might be useful.
I think that a recommendation? If somebody was to pick the thesis up off a library shelf and flick through it, I think a summary diagram really helps. And he's got that lovely diagram in his first chapter, his sort of hypothesis that he's testing. I'd like to, just bring it back to that and say what new data he has and which of those does it accept or reject. Each of those
so goes from there, so based on the hypothesis. That's great. Are there any other recommendations, or does that cover all the changes that you require?
Well, there's certainly several bibliographic issues here that are detailed. So his bibliography needs to be tightened up with the addition of one or two.
That's good.
We mentioned
that those are indicated.
But it's all detailed here, so I'm quite happy to hand this over to him.
Okay, so once he's made his corrections, would it be necessary for you to see the corrected thesis?
No, I'd be quite happy for the internal to check that all the points that we require him to do have been adequately covered. We're not talking about substantial changes, in my opinion. Simply the addition of some sections and corrections here and there.
Okay, good, that's fine. So before the discussion, your viewpoint was that the thesis was in the category A, B or C. A being accepted without any changes, B and C both requiring some changes, but the distinction between B and C is based on the duration of time required to make those changes. I don't think, does anyone have any other issues that they wish to raise or matters that you want conveyed to them?
I think it did
quite a robust defence.
So everyone
I think he's got
happy
the credits are all there in the dissertation. Due credit's been given to all the data that's not his. I think he's acknowledged that.
That's an important point, but yes.
That's right. Intellectual property issues appear to have been covered. I think he seems to have obtained permission from collaborators. It certainly mentions it in here, as well as the supervisors, because clearly there's a symbiotic relationship between supervisors and students, and ideas float around, but he seems to have covered that internally, so I'm happy enough that intellectual property issues are dealt with.
Have been covered.
Yes.
Okay, well, if you're both happy to agree to these as the recommended changes, Zoe, you sign on the bottom line, Jim on the top, and we have, that's the first in the series of paperwork.